So we'll open the session and item number 1 is called to order. Please note that the meeting has started. Our next item is acknowledgement of traditional lands. We will now view the acknowledgement of traditional lands.
The land upon which we work, live, and sustain ourselves is the ancestral and treaty lands of the Michizagig Anishinaabe, also known today as the Mississaugas of the Credit, the rightful caretakers and title holders of this land. We also recognize the rich pre-contact history and relationships which include the Anishinaabe and the Ongwe Hongwe.
Since European contact, this land continues to be home to Indigenous and non-Indigenous peoples. As responsible community members, we value the diversity, dignity, and worth of all people.
Colonialism displaced and dispossessed Indigenous peoples of their ancestral land
and continues to deny their basic human rights, dignities, and freedoms.
We are committed to learning true history to reconcile, make reparations, and fulfill our treaty obligations to the original peoples and our collective responsibilities to the lands, water, animals, and each other for future generations.
Thank you for playing acknowledgement of traditional lands. Now let's go around the room and get to know each other. I will introduce myself first. My name is Saria. I'm co-chair of the PIC, and this is my second year serving the PIC committee. I will pass it on to my right side.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Dr. Camille Logan. I'm one of the Associate Directors, School Improvement and Equity here at the Peelschools School Board.
Laura Fernandez, Board Reporter. My name is Shazzy Hassan. I've been on PIC for a few years and I'm looking forward to being back.
Hi everyone, my name is Allison and I am starting my second term, or my second year rather, my first term with PIC. I'm happy to be here.
Hello everyone, my name is Shannon. This is my first year as a member of PIC and I'm very happy to be here too.
Hello and good evening, everyone. My name is Adnan Ghani. I'm a PIC parent member, and this is my second year. Thank you.
My name is Jason, and this is my first year. I will say that the audio sounds much better here than it does online. So when we're listening to it online, it's really hard to hear.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Sweetie Sharma. This is my first year, second term. That's like third year. And I'm very excited to be here in person. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Susan Benjamin. I'm the trustee for Ward 5, Mississauga Mountain, and I think I've been forever in PIC. Thank you. I enjoy being in PIC.
Yes.
Good evening, Jocelyn Ford-Capic, Governance Officer for Peel District School Board.
Good evening, everyone. Kami Adini, Governance Coordinator. Thank
you. Trustee Will Davies from Brampton, Northwest Brampton, Wards 2 and 6.
Thank you. And
Mark, Media Support.
Ray, Media Support.
Thank you for always being here, Mark and Ray.
Thank you very much. Now we move to our next item of the agenda, approval of agenda. We now want a mover for approval of agenda. Azia?
I do.
Seconded by Adnan. That the Parent Involvement Committee approves the agenda of October 17, 2024. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Next agenda item for tonight is declarations of conflict of interest. Are there any declarations of conflict of interest? Next, we move to the agenda item number 5, approval of minutes. The minutes were shared from the last meeting, and we need a mover for that. Sweetie, and the seconder?
I do.
Thank you very much. Minutes approved. Next agenda item for tonight is PIC update and reports.
Madam Co-Chair, before you move on the approval of minutes, we had some discussion last meeting about the minutes gaps about some information not seen by every member.
Yes.
Member bylaws part. If you can please reflect or comment something on that.
So that was about the bylaws. The bylaw review committee will continue their work and that will be updated in the next meeting.
Thank you. I just want to make sure everybody get communicated.
Thank you very much. Next, item number 6 for tonight is PIC updates or reports. So our first item is PIC orientation update. I want to provide an update on the PIC orientation that took place on October 10, 2024. The session began with a land acknowledgement and welcome remarks from Dr. Camille Logan, who emphasized the vital role of family involvement in supporting student success. We covered the parent involvement committee's structure, its collaboration with the Director of Education and trustees, and its purpose in fostering parent engagement across the board. Key topics included the parent engagement framework, which encourages parents to support their children's learning both at home and at school, and the financial overview for 2024-2025, which includes parents engagement funds and parents reaching out grants for share. We also reviewed communication protocols and confidentiality expectations, essential to building trust within the committee. Members were also briefed on key contacts within the board, including Dr. Camille Logan, Associate Director, School Improvement and Equity, Jasmine Workhapic, Governance Officer, Athia Grant, Superintendent Equity, Indigenous, Education and Community Engagement. Additionally, members were reminded to mark important PIC meeting dates on their calendars. The session also covered legal governance, including the detailed explanation of jargons of PIC agenda and member responsibilities in ensuring compliance with board policies. Members were encouraged to maintain transparency and adhere to these legal guidelines. The orientation slide deck has been shared with all PIC members. If you missed the session or need more details, especially on legal governance, feel free to reach out. Looking forward to working together to meet our goals of improving student achievement, promoting safety and well-being, and fostering equity and inclusion. Now, I want to move on that they received the information of the PIC orientation date.
I do, Madam Co-Chair.
And seconder. Did the parent involvement committee receive the PIC orientation update? Is there any discussion? All in favor? For item number 6.2 for tonight is PIC elections. Election of the following parent involvement committee executive positions. Number 1 is co-chair. The first order of business is the election of the PIC co-chair. This election is for a 2-year term. We'll now open nominations. Please raise your hand if you wish to put forward a nomination. Please note that the committee member may nominate themselves. So far, we have one nomination from Shazia. Do we have any other nomination?
For which position?
For co-chair. I have received nomination from Shazia Hassan to serve as co-chair of the committee. Can I have a motion from member to appoint Shazia Hassan as co-chair of the parent involvement committee? Preeti Sharma. Do I have a seconder for this motion? All of you members accept the nomination of Shazia Hassan?
Yes, we do.
Yes. Congratulations, Shazia. You are acclaimed as co-chair. Next election for tonight is for secretary position.
Sorry, through you, Chair, we could have a motion to close nominations.
Okay. Do we have motion? We need a mover for that Shazi Hassan is elected, is acclaimed as co-chair.
Yes, I do.
We have second election. Okay. Next election for tonight is for secretary position. We will now open nominations for committee secretary. Please raise your hand if you wish to put forward a nomination. Please note that the committee member may nominate themselves. So far, I have received one nomination for the secretary position from Sweetie. Is there any other member who wish to serve as secretary of the committee? Can I have a motion from members to appoint Sweetie Sharma as secretary of the Parent Involvement Committee? Do I have a seconder? The members, do you accept the nomination for Sweetie Sharma? Congratulations, Sweetie. Thank you. We need a mover to acclaim Sweetie Sharma as a secretary.
I do, Madam Co-Chair.
And a seconder. The third election for tonight is for treasurer. We will now open nomination for treasurer position. Please raise your hand if you wish to put forward a nomination. Please note that the committee member may nominate themselves. So far, we have one nomination from the committee member, Adnan Ghani. Do we have any other member who wish to serve as treasurer of the committee? Can I have a motion from members to appoint member Adnan Ghani as treasurer of the Parent Involvement Committee? I do. Do I have a seconder for this motion? Members, do you accept the nomination of Adnan Ghani? Congratulations, Adnan. You are staying as treasurer.
Thank you.
May I now have a motion that the nomination be closed? We need a mover to close the nomination. And a seconder. Congratulations, everyone. Now I would like to invite all the newly acclaimed executive members to say a few words about yourself and about the committee. I'll start with the co-chair.
Thank you, everyone. I'm really looking forward to this year and working with all of you to really make a difference and really, stand up for school councils and for engagement this year. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you, co-chair.
Good evening. This is Sweetie. I'm very happy to be continuing the job which I'm doing, but looking forward with more energy and some great people I can see to work with. Let's make some difference in our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Sweetie.
I first would like to thank everyone who voted for me, and I appreciate that. And I also looking forward for everyone's support. And I hope in this term I will, with support of other peer parent members, I would able to, provide the guidance for the next year treasure. And maybe no more nominees will come up next year. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Next item for tonight is about the 6 subcommittees. At this time, we would like to ask members for their interest in joining the subcommittees. Please raise your hand if you wish to put forward a nomination. Please note that the committee member may nominate themselves. Selection subcommittee is the first subcommittee. Please raise your hand if you want to join the selection subcommittee. Adnan Ghani.
Can I just ask what the selection subcommittee does?
So selected subcommittee will work for the next year selecting members for the next academic year. And it will start working in April.
Sure.
Jason, Adnan, Shazia.
Only 3 members?
Jasmine?
Your indulgence for a moment.
I think more members can join. You want to join?
Yeah, I'm going to try. I check it out.
But she's this.
Through the chair, our selection subcommittee is comprised of at least one of the co-chairs and up to 4 additional parent and trustee members.
Yeah, so we have room for extra, I guess, yeah.
Yeah, it's 1 co-chair and 4 additional parent member, right? So yeah, I think Shazia, me, yeah, that's right.
Is this where we throw the people who aren't here under the bus and we put them on all the different committees that nobody wants to be a part of? Is that what this is?
Yeah. We need more.
Yeah. Can I ask a question about the subcommittees just before we continue? Would that be an okay time to do that?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so I wondered, and I apologize for not getting to this earlier when the draft agenda was shared. So I recognize you might not be able to do anything about my question now. But I would be interested in considering an additional committee so that we would have the selection subcommittee, the bylaws review subcommittee, and the strategic planning committee would be essentially split into 2 committees. To date, at least from my experience on the committee, the strategic planning committee was really the event planning committee. And I think we need that committee. And I also think that we would benefit from a strategic planning committee that could help to have some of the strategic conversations. Some of the work around communication could maybe come from that committee. And just some of those bigger picture conversations could take place in that committee. I'll say one more thing, which is having been on the strategic planning committee last year, it took all of our meeting time and we met quite a bit to plan the events because there are a lot of work to plan and they take a lot of meeting time to plan. So I think we would benefit from a 4th subcommittee. And I'm wondering whether that would be possible at this late stage to have a 4th committee added. And we could call it the event planning committee. We have before. Oh, and okay, Shazia is saying that existed in the past. I'm curious about what others' thoughts are on that, just before we kind of parse out all the humans on the subcommittees.
Thank you, Alice. Jasmine, can you add to it?
And through you, Chair, are you putting forward a motion to create that committee, start that committee?
I think if it's possible to do so, and if others are interested, then I would do that. I'm curious, like, as I'm looking around the room, whether there are nodding heads, like, are we interested in that? Or did others find that the strategic planning committee had so much event work on its plate that it wasn't able to do the strategic work?
Madam Co-Chair, if I may say that. So, I mean, I like the idea for sure. It makes a lot of sense. Realistically, if I see the current, in my opinion, personal opinion, the strength we have now, based on the capacity of each subcommittee comprising of one co-chair and 4 members, we barely get first committee done with 3 + 1 combination. Okay, so I mean, I'm not sure how many people we have on board to do 2 committees, but what about keeping your concept, which is great, having the maximum people in this committee, planning, strategic committee, and having the brain and then subdivide ourselves or whoever in that committee divide themselves in the execution and planning part on their own, because subcommittees work a little bit differently. It's not public meeting and things like that. So I think we can customize ourselves or improvise ourselves or whoever wants to be in that committee to do things or get things done. What everybody thinks about that.
I like that idea, provided that we can have enough, provided and maybe our governance expert can advise us whether we can pack that committee with more than just 4 people, which I think we can. But I'd be curious about that. And we can. No, we can. So yeah, I agree. I think if we had enough people there, then maybe we could establish a working group within the strategic planning committee to run, for example, the Great Start event or the other events. And that way the strategic planning work wouldn't be lost. I can live with that. And I appreciate getting the airtime to have the discussion.
Can we check how many members can be in the strategic planning committee? Because we are talking about members. If we have more members, then it's easy to do the task. Thank you.
Can I just ask a clarifying question? So in terms of the strategic planning, so what does that entail? It sounds like it was supposed to be for something else, but got hijacked into event planning. What is the strategic planning we're supposed to be doing in that event?
I think that's up for us to determine. I was advocating for big picture goal setting. And I know that others around the table were part of that, and that work has started. But I think, to your point, I think it's up to us to shape what that might be. It's very easy, I think, in a committee like this, to embark on the year and do business as usual, and then the year's over. And I think there's an opportunity to have a strategic planning discussion, and we see what comes up as priorities that we think would be strategic. So I'm just wanting to create the space so that we don't lose sight of that conversation, because I think it's a very worthwhile conversation and partially the reason why we exist.
Right. I would agree with that.
If I could just add a comment to that. It sounds like the strategic planning and the event focus are 2 very different objectives. And so while I can appreciate that one would be domiciled within the other, if someone's going to be volunteering for this committee, it would be helpful to manage expectations of what part of that group they would like to step into. It would be a real shame for someone who's not excited about events to have to end up planning events because they're part of this committee. So I think it would be helpful if people are going to be nominating or self-nominating, volunteering for a subcommittee, if they could be clear which part of the strategic planning subcommittee they would like to be serving on. Is that possible? Just give us a
Since it's been looking at it, like my personal desire is that if all the parent members will join the most exciting strategic committee, which can bend down towards planning and execution, will be great actually.
I totally agree with that.
I agree too. I think it's a great point, and so that our new members know that that's possible, provided that it is possible for all of us to join that subcommittee. That would be great.
And I think in the subcommittee meetings, I think, they're obviously less formal. We can have those discussions about the division of, who's doing what the priorities are, and sort of have that plan, in the short term and in the long term. And I think we recognize that, people are limited in what we can do. So I think having that discussion internally about who can allocate resources to what at that time would probably be good, which makes me think we should probably have that meeting sooner rather than later.
And I'll just add one more thing, if that's okay. And that is for our new members, that the board staff is exceptional in their support of the events. So it doesn't fall only to the volunteer parents on this committee. We get a lot of support, and they're great to work with.
Are we looking at to expand 4+1 combination or in a stick? Like a.
So that's just for selection.
Okay, for selection.
Given the discussion that's just taking place, I am willing to retract the suggestion to add an additional committee, so I'm not putting forward that motion. But again, I appreciate the discussion, and back to you, co-chair.
So you're not bringing any motion?
No, I'm happy. And then has a great solution.
Okay, I was going to give you floor for the motion.
Unless anyone's, you feel like the need. But I think that was a really important discussion.
So now we will ask the nomination, the members for their interest in joining the bylaw review subcommittee. Shazia. Alison. Deva. We have 3 nominations for bylaw review subcommittee. Thank you very much. Anyone else wants to join? Thank you all. The next subcommittee is strategic planning subcommittee. The strategic planning subcommittee will actively communicate with PIC members to assist in agenda setup, and organizing the Great Start event. In addition, the committee will serve as a planning body to coordinate and outline the goals for the academic year 2024-2025. We look forward to working together to set clear objectives and ensure a successful and engaging year for all stakeholders. Now, I would like to invite members to join this strategic planning subcommittee. We have very good hands.
I don't want to do
You
have to say your name because I'm looking at everyone.
Myself, Sadia.
Allison. Everybody, it looked like it was everybody who's here.
Everybody's
present,
here.
right?
I'm Shannon.
I may see the hands at the back, actually.
Dima.
Everybody who's here. You can help.
So Dima, Adnan.
Jason, Sweetie, Stacy.
Oh, okay.
Thank you, everyone. I appreciate that. So we'll move to the next agenda item for tonight, that is PIC budget. And just want to update again, the parent involvement committee has been allocated parent engagement funds, that is $30,423 to support parent engagement activities. Now I need a mover that they received the information. Tracy Ann. Any seconder?
I do. Madam.
Secondary Adnan, that the parent involvement committee receives the PIC budget update. Is there any discussion around it?
If I may, Madam Chair. So we had this conversation last meeting as well. So I'm just wondering, this budget, is it for 2024, 2025, or is it potential budget, or it is the accurate budget for this year?
This is the accurate budget.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
All in favor? We need a mover.
I move.
And seconder?
I move.
Great. The next item for tonight is Parent Involvement Committee MYSP discussion. The Parent Involvement Committee is seeking detailed information from the board regarding its multi-year strategic planning, as this will guide PIC's alignment with key goals. To ensure meaningful parent and community engagement, PIC is planning to distribute a survey during the upcoming Great Start event, targeting school councils to gather input on key focus areas regarding an aspect of the MYSP goals. Moving forward, each public PIC meeting will address one of these key areas through discussions and or presentations featuring board representatives aimed at addressing interests and queries from families and communities as aligned with PIC's mandate. Prior to each meeting, PIC will share the discussion topic, such as MYSP goal and specific areas, programs, and actions through its communication channels to encourage active participation and input from the parents and community. Is there anything board would like to share on this?
through you, Chair, and thank you for the concept. And I think that's a reflection of the discussion that we had last time. And I think just to give an example of what this could look like, you received at the last meeting a copy of the brochure, and so you would have seen that with the multi-year strategic plan, there are 4 goals. So in my understanding of what the chair is requesting is that there could be an opportunity for at each of the meetings to identify one of the goals. And then in that document that you received, you would see that there's also actions that the goal is that the that are intended for the support staff to engage in, whether it be central staff or based in schools, that there are expectations. And so if, for example, if we look at the student achievement goal, there may be something of interest from the committee that they would like to see for goal number 1, and that would support what's happening in schools. So goal number 1 is around student achievement, and when you look at the goals, there's many ways in which we know that school councils can support student achievement in schools, many ways that parents can engage in supporting learning at home and working in partnership with the school. So if this is an example of one, for instance, that could be a presentation. We could then reach out to the curriculum department, who could then do a presentation and talk about the different ways that parents could support their children in learning at home and vice versa. And this is something that could be shared through conversation with yourselves, also back at your schools with your school councils. And so in us having a sort of a bit of a discussion previously, we're thinking that, for example, in December, it could be the student achievement goal. In January, it could be the safety and well-being goal, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And we could get a sense from the committee, if you want to narrow it down a little bit in terms of what types of things that you would like to see as part of that presentation.
Thank you, Dr. Logan. Do you have any questions?
So is the survey going to be disseminated to just the attendees at the Great Start Conference, or is there a broader dissemination plan to all school councils, just recognizing that we're probably not going to get everyone at the Great Start? I mean, I'm fingers crossed we will, but in case we don't, is there a broader dissemination plan?
So we are planning to give survey through the school councils so that they can get the information in their school community and that they can share with the PIC during the Great Start.
So the communication will happen before the Great Start?
Yes.
Okay, before. And then
we will give the invitation to them to join the Great Start. At that time we will give them the survey.
Okay. And then that brings me to a more broader communication question. Have we thought about what our communication plan with school councils is going to be going forward, just to be able to, for example, like this is really important. How can we ensure that, you know, we are able to disseminate this to all school councils? How can we directly communicate with them on this?
Thank you for your question. And I think this is the part of our next agenda item, that is PIC communication.
There we go.
So, but before moving to that, I need a mover and a seconder that they receive the information shared by the board member, Dr. Camille Logan. Move. Thank you. Jason. Thank you very much. The next agenda item for tonight is PIC communication. The Parent Involvement Committee recognizes the importance of effective communication with community members, parents, and caregivers in fostering a collaborative environment that supports student success. PIC aims to maintain open and timely communication through various channels, ensuring that important updates, initiatives, and opportunities for engagement and are accessible to all. To enhance this effort, PIC is seeking a dedicated section in the board's monthly newsletter to share relevant information and updates with families whenever needed. This section will allow PIC to inform the broader community about upcoming events, resources, and key initiatives, fostering stronger connections between parents, caregivers, and the school board. Thank you. And I have board's perspective on PIC communication proposal.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. So if this concept and idea is amenable to PIC, we could then have a conversation with Communications Department around what that section could look like. Because they're the ones that take the lead for the communication that goes out, and we can make a determination around what would be appropriate and the structure and format for a section that would work for PIC.
Thank you, Dr. Logan. Do we have any discussion around this?
Brings up a question. So we're looking to have a section inside the newsletter. Yes, you said for the month. Is that it?
Whenever needed.
Right. Is there what other methods are we currently using to communicate with?
The method that we used last year, it was through superintendent. Whenever we needed to communicate through school council, we were giving information to superintendent, and on behalf of it, the superintendent connects with the school council. We want to update that method and so that it can be more to make the stronger connection between family and caregivers and the PIC.
And through you, Chair, just to also add, we also communicated through social media. So if there was an event, we also shared it on Instagram and X, and we also communicated on the website. And so another thought is also to ensure that the website that's available there for parents is a little bit more robust for the PIC website itself. So it's also maybe a place to house resources and materials that would be appropriate for school councils. So another consideration for us to think about, because sometimes we know that even through email communication, parents don't always receive that. So it would be great to have that conversation with our communications lead to talk about ways in which we can enhance communication.
Thank you, Dr. Logan. Yes.
Thank you, and through the chair, and just to add to what Dr. Logan said, sometimes, not all schools have newsletters which go out, but on every school website, the homepage, there is a section called school news. So maybe it could go into that because, the parent goes to the individual school where the child is going. So that is where they will be looking for the news. So you could just add it on that particular section too. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Benjamin.
Just a quick question. So you shared that currently right now, the method of communication is that anything that goes to school councils goes to the superintendent and the superintendent is the master there.
Yeah. I just through the chair. Communication also goes through memos that will go to the principal, and then the principal will send that to, so not just through the superintendent. Most of the communication is through the principal by memos, because we have what's called a system leadership communication. And so all of the principals receive that once a week with all of our memos, and then they will send out, they do the same thing for teachers as well. So teachers as well, it's often through the school principal as well, and they also will share it with the school council.
Great.
So that's just our regular method of communication with our staff, students, and families.
And then apologies, just a follow-up question. I think there was a comment about how we're endeavoring to improve on that method, or okay. So I just wonder, this sounds like a strategic priority, and perhaps this would be a really great discussion for the strategic planning subcommittee to be sort of looking at overall PIC communications and how to tackle that in a tactical way. That's right. Yes. Okay. Thank you.
And just building on exactly what you just said at the last minute, like I'd like to see if we can find a method for improving that communication where PIC can communicate directly with school councils, because this is a criticism that PIC has received in the past and continues to receive, that communication from two school councils doesn't come through PIC. PIC is still seen as a little bit of a black box, not accessible. So if we can look at ways to, sort of find avenues where PIC can have a direct connection with council, I think it would be really great. So maybe that's something that we can talk about and looping communications of that as well. And then just on the question about the newsletter, so just recognizing that Great Start is sort of, almost mid-November. Is there a plan then to put that information about the survey into the November message that goes out, the all families message that goes out? And if we are aiming for that, what are the timelines? Because I know that obviously that newsletter takes time. It's kind of got to go through a vetting process. Are we behind already, and do we have to explore a different method of reaching out to these school councils?
Through you, Chair, we can meet with Michelle Green, who is the manager for our communications department, and sort of establish a plan. And if we are not able to, and I'm just sharing this as a thought, not sure, but if for some reason we can't meet the deadline in order for that to be included in the communication, then we can still do it through a regular means of communication as we advertise the Great Start. We can find ways either through the memos that we've been using to complete that, go directly to school councils as another means in order to be able to gather that information as an alternative if we're not able to get that into the actual communication.
And just as a follow-up to that, I think as we're looking to this as an option for communication, I think it would be good to know just sort of what the timelines are overall, to be able to get something into the newsletter, just so we're not missing the mark, let's say in December or anything going forward. So just for knowledge, I think it'd be good.
Thank you, everyone. And I would just like to add to what Camille mentioned, that this is the work that strategic planning subcommittee we're going to do for Great Start, and everything that how we are going to work around the communication process and planning for the Great Start. So we will keep meeting to discuss around those areas.
Madam Co-Chair, you may allow me. I just want to comment two things. So first, we generalize two types of communication. One communication coming from PIC, and one coming for all audience, and one is for school council from their school sites. So I will keep my comments for the information coming from PIC to all audience to PDSB. On the subcommittee part, I will part my information, like details there. But what I would like to bring it to even board, Dr. Logan as well, that till now this year, I noticed compared to last year we had this rule set up or the policy set up that the co-chairs of school council or chair of school council has an option to either pick email, so PDSB email account, or volunteer their own email account for communication with PIC or school board. For now, it didn't happen so far this year because I know I'm part of school councils. So I know last year some communication came through school to school council chairs or co-chairs to establish that growth. But I know most of the schools have done one meeting, or they're going towards their second meeting soon. But this part has not been established yet. Just for your knowledge, I want to bring it to you.
Thank you, Osman.
Can I ask another question? Oh, sorry, go ahead. Okay. So this is just on Great Start, because this is kind of the first I've heard of it, in terms of being on a parent council, and is it always in November? Is this kind of like the usual plan? It's held every year in November or middle of November?
And this year we are doing earlier because usually we used to do it in of December. But since we want to give a good start to school councils, this year we are doing earlier in November.
Okay. So if a follow-up question, my understanding is that the Great Start is like parent council one-on-one?
We will invite all the school council members and the board members along with PIC. They will come to share the information regarding the working policies of the school councils and ministry resources that are available to help them to work throughout the year.
Okay. I'm just curious, is it not something that should be then maybe thought of as like October or like earlier on in the year versus like December where kind of already halfway through the year.
I mean, that's why we have moved just 1 month this year. Maybe we will strategize for the next year so that we can move it ahead.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just trying to collect an idea of where we're at with those.
Thank you for your suggestion.
Just following up on what admin had mentioned about the optional collection of school council chair email addresses. So I just want to confirm, so would the plan be that that would continue in the absence of, something different, that communication like would go out and that those folks could offer up their email addresses?
Through your chair, I'll go back and just to clarify that communication piece in order to be able to answer your question.
Okay, fair enough, because all I would just register on this discussion piece is I really like the idea of having a section in the monthly family update. I think that would be great. And I also am not sure that it's quite enough. So I think that it would also be important to continue to collect those addresses to the extent that people are interested, and if they don't want to give us their email address, then we know that that's not a desired channel, right? But the school council chairs that I know, I think would be interested, not to speak for all of them, obviously, but I guess we'll find out, but I do think that's certainly worth pursuing.
Thank you, Alison, for your suggestion. Thank you very much.
Can I just follow-up question to that? So do we have like statistical information on what number of people read the newsletters and the websites? Anything along those lines?
Social media. Answer on this.
Through your chair. Likely the senior manager of the communications department. So that's Michelle Green, who we would be having that conversation with. That's in her purview. So she probably has that data and is tracking that information. So unfortunately, I don't have that at this time.
But it's accessible.
But it's accessible, and from my understanding, that newsletter that does go out once a month is well received and well read. Plus, we also have the sections that are on the website that also replicate that information, and the different sections are also highlighted. So we have multiple ways in which our families receive information and want to receive information as well, and also choose to communicate with us. So it's, the department has been multifaceted in terms of their outreach to families and community.
Sorry, Chair. Going back to Alison's question, I used to be a school council member of an individual school, and what I remember that they have the school email for the school council. Not everybody knows how to access that email, so definitely awareness is the key. So if we are communicating through that email, again, that can be a part of a newsletter awareness. Does that make sense? Got it. Okay. Thank you.
I just want to add to the email issue. I know this came up last year, and governance was supposed to deal with communication somewhere there about either putting it back in place because there was some issues with the email, and along with the issues with the email, councils were not using the email. So it was just sitting there not using, and there was something legal happened there, and they had to shut it down to protect the whole system from the after whatever they were preventing. So that's where the school council issue is with email.
Thank you, Stacey, for sharing the information.
Madam Co-Chair, may I just I just want to fill all my colleagues and peers here on that part. Last year it was established due to the main reason was discussed with us or shared with us due to privacy and security reason. School council official email addresses being collapsed. They're no longer valid. They're no longer able to be used by the school councils. It already happened last year. And based on that, school council chair or co-chairs had the option to either set up through PDSP email account, customized email account like we have for ourselves, or use their personal email for communication, but only them. So what I brought it earlier, just a moment ago, was about that communication has not been addressed this year yet. So I just want to bring it. But in terms of the legal part or the process part, that is now as per further notice. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for sharing the information. Do we have any other discussion around it? So we're moving to our next agenda item for tonight, that is program update. The Ministry of Education Parent Reaching Out Grants Program provides funding for school boards to support projects for parents and families, focusing on improving access and opportunities for participation and engagement in their children's learning. The program funding for this school year is $124,000. And further details on the allocation of the programs to school councils, I will pass over to Kamil. She will share further details around the program funding.
Through the chair. So at the last meeting, there was lots of questions about programs and trying to understand the program funds and some of the changes. So I'll outline these changes. I thought it would just be easier to do that. And then I think there was a little bit of a blur in the conversation between a thought for moving forward this year. And so I'll articulate what that thought is, and essentially, as a committee, you can decide if that is what you would like to do going forward with regards to the programs. Because I think it got melded a little bit in terms of what we were speaking about at the last meeting. And so last year, it was Elizabeth England, who was in the role as a coordinating principal in curriculum, who had hands-on with regards to really working with the committee around this. So I will do my best to be able to answer your questions and to walk us through some of the notes that she supported me in terms of articulating for this evening. So if I can get you to go to the next slide, please. And so one of the things that's really important for us also to understand around the change that happened around the funding is that the funding changed from the ministry. And so we used to have what's called the grants for student needs. And the way that it was structured, we had a pot of funds that were for the school board, and then a pot of funds that were all envelope funds, and that has now changed for this year. And now we have what's called core education funding. And so you'll see that it has 6 pillars that are listed there. And then those funds are now the way that things are structured. So it's just important for us to recognize that there's a change in the funding model, and that has also affected the way that we have done the program funds, because they've also tried to really change the way that funds are being allocated for programs. So it's not as administrative intensive as it has been. So if you can go to the next slide, thank you. And so when we look at the program funding, it's supposed to support initiatives that are in line with parent engagement, in line with the legislation, in line with the purpose of school councils, and that's what the funds are for. And so it's in the past, there has been an application process. And then schools, as you know, would fill out the application form and then make sure that they spend the funds according to what has been articulated as part of the expectations for receiving the funding. And so, I can go to the next slide, please. And so a criteria was established, and that was established based on what the ministry has outlined and also what the board felt were its priorities. And so the projects needed to align with some of these key areas. So looking at social inclusion, addressing racism, specifically anti-Asian racism, anti-Black racism, anti-Indigenous racism, and other prejudices that we sometimes happen in our school around marginalized groups. We wanted to make sure that any of the presentations that were occurring and projects were really designed to ensure that we're creating a safe and welcoming environment for students. Really wanted to highlight parents and the incredible information and value that parents are able to bring to the table. So wanted to enhance that, and also enhancing communication with teachers. So bridging home and school, and also informing parents about communication and the curriculum. And so, I see you nodding because you would have likely seen in your own schools that presentations would align with many of those expectations, whether it be about anti-bullying prevention or looking at some of the work around our strategies. We have an anti-Black racism strategy. We have an affirming Muslim students and dismantling Islamophobia. So we have a variety of different resources that I know that schools have identified in order to support what's happening in their schools to make sure that they have an environment that is going to enhance student learning. And so when we go to the next slide, so these are just some sample projects, as I said, and so I'll just leave them on the screen and you can sort of peruse. I won't read them for you. Take a minute to kind of look at this slide. You can go to the next slide, please, Mark. So you can see there's a range of the types of projects and things that schools would do. And of course, through conversation with the school council, working in collaboration with the school administrators to make a determination around what kind of a presentation or project would occur. And the next slide are the types of projects that were declined. So you can see that, although schools may want to engage in these types of projects and events and activities, this is not something that schools could use for program funds. So that was kind of the limitations.
So Dr. Logan, I just have a question. So you said school councils can apply to use this funding.
Previously, that's what we had. We had program funds and the amount was $500.
So if you had a group of parents that had like mutual concern and wanted to access funding that potentially can fall under what this would cover, would they seek our school councils or how would they?
Right. So what should have occurred at a school council would be that they would talk about the fact that the board has offered an application process and timeline for a program. And then they would outline what the expectations are around the program and then design a proposal for the program funds.
Okay, what's the timeline usually, please?
The timeline, I'm going to continue if you don't mind, Dima. Love your questions, but I think some might be answered as I go through. And then if you have questions at the end, is that okay?
Thank you.
Okay, because I think the next slide is going to answer some of your questions. So just to highlight a couple of the things about the central administration cost limits. So some of the limits that we had also that schools had to be aware of was that you could only have a certain amount for refreshments, office supplies, etc., and that 50% of the proposed cost could be used for a workshop event. And so there's some examples that are there. So you also had to, although you received the funds, there were still some limitations around that, and that won't change. That's still going to remain the same. This is from the ministry, those limitations. But again, schools needed to be, cautious around how they were using the funds to make sure that they're using them within the way that they were regulated to do so. I can get you to go to the next slide. And so in our 2022-2023 year, this is just an example of how the funds were spent. There was 1,500 base amount per board and 500 per school, and that will continue. And then there was a total spending. And then as you can see, there was an unused portion, and that unused portion would go back to the ministry.
Can I ask you a question on that?
Yeah.
Can we go back to the other slide? Mm-hmm. So we were granted 123,000. We only spent 48,000. We had unused 74, but we only allotted 500 per school.
Right, and that's because all of the schools would have applied and requested. However, what often happens is that the schools don't use the funds. And so I'll share a little bit around why the schools haven't used the funds, and so that's why the funds remained unused. And so if we look at the 2023-2024 year, there was still a certain amount that was unused. And now we'll go to the next slide. So in terms of 2022-2023, schools were eligible to apply for $500. Not all schools applied. And there was a rolling deadline to increase applications, but this was not effective. So as the year goes on, you're trying to get more and more schools to participate. Sometimes they did participate, but then what occurred was they still didn't end up using the funds. Then in 2023-2024, you'll see the amount that was allocated. And what we did was we tried to ensure that there was greater spending, but there was still funds that were unspent. And again, it's due to a variety of timing and so forth. And so this slide shows the reason, some of the reasons. So one is that often pulling all the different pieces together, creating a survey, doing everything, receiving the applications, then vetting. And I think Allison, and I'm not sure who else joined you, Allison, Elizabeth, Telta, Adnan, reading the applications takes time. So there's a quite amount of time that's invested in distributing. We know that we need to give school councils time to fill out the form, to have a meeting, to talk about what would you like to do. They fill out the form, it's submitted, then there's a vetting process. So there's quite an amount of administrative time that often comes into play. We also had a lower number of applications because for some schools, depending on the situation and circumstance, they may say that we don't need that amount. We don't need the $500. So we will not apply, given also the expectations for the application process. And then sometimes, again, as you can imagine, just by virtue of different things occurred, they made plans, could be that there's an event and it snows. And so they have to cancel the event. So sometimes they don't have an opportunity to use the funds.
I have a question. So when we are doing in the newsletter, can we put this forward in the communication part about the program so that when they have the school council meeting in each schools, they can talk about programs before so that they can plan ahead rather than going the last minute?
For sure, and that has happened. And so in the newsletter, in the communication, actually, because it was a school council piece, it wasn't just because we're talking about that specifically now about having a section for PIC. The program applications actually were included in the communication that was sent out.
Thank you.
And so the thought this year is to, is there another question?
Next slide.
Oh, thank you. Thanks. So the thought this year is perhaps to simplify the process and think about giving the distribution directly to schools without an application process. And because it is $500, and for some schools, that's great. Oh my goodness, it's wonderful. And for some schools, not so much, because they have a variety of different avenues for the funds. So this is one thought to minimize some of the administrative responsibilities that comes through a proposal process. Again, clarifying what the expectations are around using it, but distributing it that way. And we know that some of our other boards do that. And another thought that we could do is, again, submitting the communication out to schools, indicating, would you like the $500? They opt in. If they opt out, then we know how much is unspent. And then we could propose another way to distribute to schools, whatever the unspent amount is. We know that for example, some of our smaller schools, with obviously smaller school populations, and sometimes also depending on the socioeconomic area as well, may need additional funds because they may not have as much access to fundraising dollars that might be available through their school community. So it could be a decision that we establish a plan for the unused funds by virtue of who did not accept the $500 to find a way to support another pocket of schools as an example. And that's something I think the strategic planning / agenda planning committee could perhaps have a discussion around and then bring back to the committee. So that's kind of what we were thinking of proposing, simplifying the process, distributing the 500 by virtue of schools that put up their hand and say, yes, we like it. Then we could see earlier on the unused funds and then establish a way of then providing the unused funds for schools that might be in greater need of supports.
Yes, Shannon?
May I ask a question?
Sure.
Dr. Logan, the question of whether or not the school is able or willing or wanting to opt in or opt out, would that be a decision made through the administration? Is that a school council decision? How would that work?
Through you, that would be through the school council. So the school council would be the one that would decide about the opting in and opting out because the program is a school
Parents
council.
reaching out.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's a school council decision. Yes.
Thank you.
Madam Co-Chair, Dr. Logan, if you allow me. Dr. Logan, are you suggesting or asking PIC suggestion or opinion to establish pro-grant simplified process? Yes?
Yes.
Okay.
This is a proposal from the Dr. Logan and we want committee members discussion around it.
So would you like this to take it to subcommittee level and then bring it back to the main meeting, or how do you want to go about this?
Yes, so we will be, when we are planning for the great stars, so we will be discussing around these areas too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, if you I just want to interject about for correction, please. Sorry, I was not in the part of the selection of the program. Allison was there. I was nodding my head.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Just a correction.
Thank you.
And I also want to add something for everyone that last year, for some good reason or so, when schools applied for a program, instead of 500, they got $720.
Oh, okay.
So I just want to let everybody know about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Adnan, for this.
So I think this goes back to the communication piece now. So if we're letting schools know that we're giving them $500 and they have the option to opt out, but the decision rests with the school council. If we're disseminating information through the principals down to the school councils, how are we ensuring that the decision isn't coming from the principal themselves or the administration? Because we have heard that in some schools, administration holds on and makes decisions about program funding, and also the $500 parent engagement fund that they receive automatically. So how can we ensure that it's really the decision is coming from the school council, and how can we ensure that the school council is receiving the information? So again, it sort of goes back to that communication piece and just making sure that we're not excluding schools that may not receive the information. And then also to Adnan's point, they receive $720. I know I've already received questions from just people reaching out to say, hey, what's going on with program funding? They're looking for extended funding. So, I'd like if we could take this back as a subcommittee and sort of think about this, because it may be more work to just disseminate the money to all the school councils and sort of have to track who's not using it, and maybe think about alternatives of what we can do with the unspent funds as the year goes by.
So is a rule that the unused money will go back to the Ministry of Education?
Through you, Chair, there was a change this year so that the money will now sit with the board. It doesn't go back to the ministry, so it will sit with the board.
That's good. Okay.
But it's still program funds, and the funds still have to be used by school councils in a particular.
So Dr. Logan, I have a follow-up question regarding this. So if we could have information regarding the unused program funding beforehand, before the end of the academic
I was
year.
about to say this.
So could we use that money for the PIC, because PIC is also part of the supporting community, parents and caregivers?
Absolutely.
So through you, Chair, I will go back and check with finance because they have all the nitty gritty around the rules. So I'll inquire to see if it has to be again through the dissemination of individual school projects, or if it's something that can be used by centrally through the PIC. I'll get that.
So, going back to the communication part, if we can give a reminder to the schools who are not using the fund within a, like, kind of maybe 6 months time or something like that, because, sometimes it may work, you know. Thank you.
So through you, Chair, if I remember correctly, I believe there was communication that went back to the schools on numerous occasions, but we also know just schools and families are busy. But thank you. I absolutely appreciate the communicating and so forth. But I also know that we did make some attempts as best as possible. But you know, for some schools, they just are busy, or sometimes the school councils may not be as some school councils are not as proactive and as robust. So there's many factors, but absolutely, we'll continue to do our best to improve communication. Absolutely, so important.
I have a follow-up question. When the money is returned to the board, the unused portion, if a school wants to have some, say the number, they get their 500 and they, something happened and they need to put another project on, can they receive an additional money from the leftover?
Through you, Chair. In the past, I don't believe that has occurred, but I don't know that through this process, that's not something that if we change it and it's all still falling within the expectations and the ministry rules, perhaps that is something that could be considered.
If we don't use it, we're gonna be accumulating money that's not going anywhere. So
yeah, and we
I
want
think it's
obviously
something we could
schools.
look at.
Agreed. But I can inquire.
The program, I have a follow-up question regarding this. So the allocation committee for the program funding. So is PIC also part of that? Like, I know the PIC works with the board to for the application process and everything. Now for the allocation, by allocating the amount. So is PIC also part of that?
Through the Chair, can you repeat your question? I'm not sure I quite understand what you mean.
The amount of funding that say last year we distributed $720. This year we are proposing to give $500 to each school. So who decides on this amount of money?
Thank you. So I think if we look at the $500, it would amount for every school. Like if we were to divide it up by the 259 schools, then it's about $500. So that's where that number came from.
123,000.
Okay, so for the unused money, so and after that, who will be the part of allocating that unused money?
So I think that's the question that is being asked, and perhaps it's a conversation for the subcommittee. But again, I would need to connect with finance just to make sure what are the rules about how that unused funds could be used. I'm not sure, for instance, if it can be used by the committee to run an event, or if it has to be still school-based, because the programs are school-based.
Well, that's why you weren't sure if PIC could use money from the program, because PIC is not really school-based. It's a student, the parent council that are school-focused.
Dr. So there is just a proposal, right, among all of our team members. The unused, there will be some few schools which are not using the fund, right? If PIC has that authority, we can use the same fund for those schools organizing some seminar or some events which are beneficial to both parents and students.
You're asking if PIC could do that?
Yes, like a kind of a idea or a proposal.
Right, so that's why I'm saying I would have to find out to see if it's something that PIC could do as, you know, again, using the unused funds, or if program funds are only allowed to be specifically school-based. But I'll inquire.
Listen.
Yes, we'll take this discussion back, which will be interesting, and I'm sure we'll come up with some great ideas. I just wanted to share briefly, because I was involved with reviewing dozens of these last year of the applications for this, that I think it would be really beneficial if we could help to guide schools into what possible options could be, because I think some of perhaps why folks don't submit is because it's like they don't know where to start. You know, they get the sort of philosophical purpose, and then it's like, what's your idea, right? That matches this philosophical purpose. Whereas having reviewed them, there were very clear themes. And Shazia, you read like, a bunch. We each read dozens of these, and there were really clear themes. It was actually really fascinating to see what the councils were focused on. And so I think it would be easy to pull together some type of just summary of ideas. We want to be careful how we position it. It's up to them. It's not prescriptive, but just to give some ideas. And the other really cool thing that schools can do with this is get together with their neighboring schools. And that's another possibility for what you were suggesting, Sweetie, which I think is a great idea. And we can see if folks aren't submitting for whatever reason, they're not mobilized with a council yet, could we go to them and do something with their neighboring schools? So I think there are a lot of cool options for us.
Thank you for your permission. So on that note, Alison, I'm also thinking each of us has assigned few schools, right? I don't know, we need maybe some legal guidance. When the school council meeting happens, can we try to make maybe online or something a part of it? And can discuss few things which we want to discuss, not through the monthly newsletter or that kind of communication, which we think, like for example, program is one of the area. So then we also create that awareness, because at the end of the day, it's the awareness creation too. And then they may think a little bit beforehand how to, or the idea generation. So that can be a part where we can be involved more. It is a little bit of our time, but I think it will be a very effective way. It's a suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you, Alison and Sweetie, for your suggestions. Do we have any other discussion around this?
Madam Co-Chair, I'm sorry, it's late. I just want to, so Dr. Logan, these slides will be shared to us later? Thank you. And they are not live on PDSP yet, correct? I'm assuming. Those new program information.
No, it's here to determine next steps.
So I remember last year, probably last meeting we had, I heard and I remember something like this, that we were expecting that there's some schools probably not going to use because they did not submit their reports. There will be unused money. And I thought and I heard that money come back to the board supervision, and it goes to PIC if they have any programs to use that money for some events or anything, something like that. So I heard something along those lines last year in our meetings. So I just want to bring it up there as well. And what Sweetie said, and especially Stesian said, I remember. So, and what Alison said as well, that, if people have a bigger programs or events ideas, multiple schools can host events, seminars and stuff. And that 500 or whatever the X amount of dollars amount can combine, because all you have to spend to pay that speaker, basically. So when you have more numbers in one hall, kind of becomes very economical as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Edna, for adding the tip. I think Shannon has worked like on the areas. Jen, pardon? I think you have worked with two different schools, like multiple schools.
Yes, I have. I've written the PRO grant, I think, a lot. So I just personally would like to share, I really appreciate this approach of being able to just give the money without the application. I think that removes a lot of barriers. I also love how this is going to address the complexity of our school neighborhoods and how some schools can use the money differently and other schools may have different needs. My official question was, just from a timing and process perspective about when we would be hoping going to solidify or be able to come with recommendations about how this process can work. I ask that because this would be an amazing thing to bring. I know it's very short notice, but this would be a great thing to talk about at Great Start. Yeah, so if we do a bit of a work back, it means the subcommittee has to meet before. So I just would like to understand what the expectation is around having at least something mapped out. Everything's
And through you, Chair, and I had the same thought as well, and it was writing down notes again in order to identify dates, for example, for the subcommittee to come together to, I think, make a decision around how the subcommittee would like to move forward, and then be engaged in part of the planning around Great Start. I was thinking the same thing. This could be either an actual workshop, perhaps at Great Start, or if not, because it's obviously up to the subcommittee and the planning group, or something that could just be shared in opening remarks, right? To say, here are different examples and so on. So there's multiple ways I think that it can be shared, but I was on the same wavelength around Great Start. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Morgan. Is there any other discussion? We need a mover that the parent involved committee receive the program update.
Yeah.
And then second, this Shazia. Thank you. All in favor? Next agenda item for tonight is Great Starts. I will very briefly go for the Great Start. So we are excited to announce that the Great Start event for all new school council members will be held on November 12, 2024 at Central Board Office. The framework for this event was already presented during our last meeting. Now we look forward to your participation and engagement in this important event. That's all for Great Start now. And yes,
I have a question. How is the registration process working? So there's two things. I noticed in the flyer that it's, or in the email communication that went out, it's directed for chairs and co-chairs. Are we still doing that? And then the second thing was I noticed that the contacts in the email are not PIC. It's not PIC. It's the superintendent and I remember who else I was just looking at it. And the coordinating principal. So will PIC be getting regular updates about registration? I think it would be helpful to know who's attending so that we can sort of think about family of schools. Is there a way, like how is PIC receiving kind of the communication as it's ongoing?
Thank you, Shazia, for your suggestion. And I think when we subcommittee will meet to discuss on the Great Start, we will know more about this. As for the number of members from each school, from the school council, that we are planning that 2 members from each school council, irrespective whether they're chair or co-chair, and any 2 members they can join in person, and all of them they are welcome to join the virtual meeting.
I have a follow-up question to the chair and Dr. Logan. The PIC funding, how much funding does PIC get yearly? Because I never really remember us talking about PIC funding.
For this year, it's 30,240. Let me check, double check here. So the PIC budget for year 2024, 2025, it has been allocated 30,423. And it's all of it is unused so far.
Making sure there's an update on each agenda.
Yeah, we will update this funding big budget in each agenda.
Okay, I'm committed to doing that this year.
Sorry, Madam Co-Chair. So it seems like on my notes, the budget and the parent engagement funding seem like the same number. Is that right? Okay, it's not like
That's the same thing.
It's the same thing.
Thank you for this.
And sorry, I'm sorry, I apologize. In the last year Great Start, I just want to request or reiterate, there's one member in the board who supported us in this event. I forgot her name, but she was very well versed. She's very thorough. She was very expert. So I would like her to be seen back this year.
Yes, can you just Okay. So through you, Chair, I will say that, I will let her know, it was Elizabeth, right?
Oh,
Elizabeth,
yes.
yeah, so I will tell her that there's a special request. And then she's a different role this year, but I'll let her know that there's a special request.
And she had also supported someone in finance part from the board. I forgot her name. She was very well versed. She knows like every word in the process and procedures there.
Thank you, Adnan.
Can I actually say sorry? Can you just explain a little bit how the hybrid is supposed to work? Like how will the hybrid approach work? David?
It's still, the planning is still in process. So we are planning to go for in-person, those who are attending in person, they are joining here in the Central Board office. And the meet link will be shared to all the school council members where they can join as always.
So through you, Chair, I'll just give an example of how some hybrid events have worked before. This may be the decision that the committee makes. And what's happened before is that in the main board, room, there's, the opening event and activities and so forth. And we have a couple of rooms that are available where a hybrid option could occur. So obviously the people who are participating would likely have more flexibility. This is just how we've done other events, where the people who are in person may have more flexibility to join different events or workshops, but the people who are hybrid might have a little bit more limitations and they can only choose one or two.
Can I just ask how the decision was made to advertise this hybrid before the planning started? I think this is a bit challenging now to work backwards.
I think at the last meeting, that was what we decided. I believe that the conversation came about, you can jump in. But I think the last meeting that we had, there was a conversation about Great Start, and I believe that the request was to make it hybrid.
Hybrid. When we were planning the strategic planning and for this year, so we got some suggestions that were proposed for the Great Start event. And for Adnan, I think the person he is mentioning about the Seher Zuberi, who mentioned about the managing school council financial and fundraising. Yes, that's right.
Thank you for that. Sure.
So now we would like to request Associate Director Dr. Logan to provide any update. I know she has provided lots of updates so far. If there's any more update from the board. Okay. For the Great Start event, we need a mover and a seconder that they receive the information about the Great Start.
I do.
Thank you.
Okay, through you, Chair. Thank you very much, and through you, Chair, and just an opportunity to congratulate all our new PIC executive members. Look forward to continuing to work with all of you and specifically on your new goals. So on behalf of Director Swaroop and my Associate Director colleagues, I'll provide you with a brief oral update from the Director's Office. As you know, for each month, we have a month of recognition. And for this month, it's October, and it's International Walk to School Month. It is also Islamic Heritage Month, and it is also Latinx and Hispanic Heritage Month as well. And so for those months, various activities are happening in schools and different events and so forth to recognize those specific months. Also want to highlight a really exciting event that took place for a group of students. You might have seen them actually in the Toronto Star. We had 4 students and they were the Team Forest Guardians. They are a group of students from Darcel Senior Public School, and now they're in high school, and so they moved on, but they had an opportunity to participate in a competition in Italy. It was the World Robot Olympiad and the Future Innovators event that took place in Italy. So the team went and they won. And so, yes, And so we're very proud of our young inventors for their Blaze Bot solution, which combats the spread of wildfires. The team of 4 students are definitely an example of the amazing students that we have in PDSB. And they're just an example of what we can look forward to in the future. And so we just want to say special congratulations to the 4 girls, and we also want to thank the teachers and the school administrators who supported them. And I believe there are some of them actually are going to be, I think, on Metro Morning tomorrow, I believe. So might want to listen in tomorrow morning to hear directly from the students that participated. So very happy for them. And so for my update, what I want to do each time is sort of just provide something that's connected to the multi-year strategic plan. And what I want to highlight is that in goal number 1, we have a focus for families and communities, and the focus is around helping families ensure that they understand the different access to pathways. And so at this time of year, very often we engage in grade 8 high school information nights as an opportunity to share all of the different opportunities that are in high school. And I just want to share that I had the great honor to participate in an event. I think it was last night. My weeks are blurred, but I believe this was just last night that I had the opportunity to go to Tompkin Middle School. And Tompkin Middle School had, I believe, about 500 families that were in attendance because all of the different high schools were there. So the feeder school for Tompkin is Applewood, Cawthra, Meadowvale. And so those high schools were there, and they had an opportunity to meet the principals, some of the staff, and the students from the various schools talked about all the amazing things that they did. And we also had community partners that were in the neighborhood that also provide wraparound support for events and activities that families may also want to be connected in. So it was a great evening. And I know that different schools are doing very similar things in terms of really promoting the community and also connecting with families. And so please keep your ears and eyes out for those events. And just want to acknowledge the families that were out there last night, was which is great, right? Just after a long weekend, and recognizing how important pathways are. And we have amazing families, and they really want to be able to support their children. So it was a great evening. We also have the Regional Learning Choices Program. Information nights are coming up in November, so that again is on the board website, but did want to make sure to draw that to everyone's attention. And as we're thinking again about the notion of pathways and thinking about the future, for November, we always have for our grade 9s, and it is across the province. So on November 6th, we'll have grade 9 kids take your kids to work day. And on that day, many of the grade 9s will have an opportunity to learn a little bit more about the place of work, whether it be for a family or a friend. But we also have an opportunity for another Pathways event, which is called Launch, and it's in collaboration with Ottawa Carleton District School Board and our board. And it is for our grades 10, 11, and 12, and it's a virtual event. And again, it's an opportunity for them to see all of the different post-secondary pathways, to hear from the different universities, and to just have a sense as to how they can create the steps for their future. So Pathways continues to be a real priority for the school board, and wanting to build understanding for students, but also families, because we know that as parents, it is our parents that will support the decision making for what students choose to do. Also want to just remind all of our families that we also encourage feedback on policies. And so on the board website, and what would have also been communicated out in the newsletter, is that we have some draft policies for review. So our safe arrival program policy, our virtual schools and e-learning policy, and also our conflict of interest policy. And so they will be posted, I think, until sometime next week. And they'll be available for review and comment. And so again, just a reminder for all of our families to go to the section on the Peel website that is called What You Need to Know. And it's a place again that we want to direct families to get that additional information. And perhaps this is somewhere where we also would make some of the PIC information available, should that be something that the committee decide, but trying to direct our families to specific places on the website, because sometimes that's also an easy channel for folks to access. So that concludes my update.
Thank you, Dr. Logan. Do we have any questions, discussion around it?
Yeah, a very quick question to Dr. Logan. Not sure if it's a part of this, of course not. The transportation for the regional school program for the secondary. I think yeah, go ahead, thank you. I think you're looking for the policy.
Yes, so through you, Chair, so we've started with elementary. And I'm just looking to confirm, but my understanding is that we will then have it for secondary next year. That is my understanding, if that's not correct. But we have it for elementary this year, we've started, so.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question to Dr. Logan about the ministry's proposal regarding the lunch program? They are going to allocate the new funding to provide the lunch. Is there any update the board get from the ministry?
Through you, Chair. So no, it hasn't. We haven't had an opportunity to discuss that yet. So I know that just came out as an announcement. So we'll have to take a look at what exactly that is, what the parameters were, et cetera, in order to make a decision around the specifics around that.
Thank you, Dr. Logan.
I'm just throwing something in. We might be lucky to get it because I see the mayor of Toronto boasting how she's giving hot lunch at schools. So who knows, we might be able to get it in Peel.
Thank you, Cecilia. Is there any other discussion?
Madam Co-Chair, I just have a question to Dr. Logan about when she was mentioning the virtual event for post-secondary pathways. Did you mention the date? I may have missed that one.
Yeah, it's on Wednesday, November 6th, and it was communicated in the last communication that went out to schools. So if you go on the board website, and it will have that information there as well. But this is our second year that we're doing it. And it went really, really well last year. And we also have, schools will also have the information. So although it's a conference and it's live, it's also recorded. So students will have access to it through their school after the event as well. So it's a really great resource and a really, really supportive piece of information for schools and for students as they make decisions around their choices as they think about post-secondary pathways.
Just to follow, Dr. Logan, I haven't checked it, but are these events like this type, which is just started since last year, posted on calendar on PDSP, or they usually come through on the emails, and all that?
I am not sure how the school is communicating it. I would imagine that each secondary school is communicating it and sharing it with families, but I'm not sure what that pathway is. I can only speak centrally, and I know that it went out in the all families, and then it's also available on the website.
Thank you, Dr.
Logan. Is there any other question?
To you, Dr. Logan. Last year we spoke about the AP programs. How we introduce it to minorities, indigenous people, and Black people, Black students. Do we have any information as to where we are with that, how we're introducing it this new year to the students coming in school?
Through you, Chair. We're in the process now of including that communication so that it will be available on the actual course selections for next year. And for some schools that are doing it into semester 2. But what I can do the next time is come back and give a little bit of an AP report if that's helpful, so that I have a little bit more information, or I can ask one of the folks from curriculum to come and speak to it directly.
Yeah, that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you for your question.
Thank you, Dr. Logan. Is there any other question?
Madam Co-Chair, I just want to add and fill my parent member, Stacey Ann, on the AP. I remember she brought it up last year as well. Just last week, Thursday, almost a week ago. One of the AP school in Mississauga, they had the info night for grade eights. So I'm expecting there's a couple of schools in every jurisdiction. They do info nights once a year. So I would highly encourage because the information you get from there, even for any kind of diversity, you can build your understanding and create a feedback of policy procedures around it that what they're talking about, who they are selecting, what they selecting criteria. Because I remember in my personal case 2 years ago, uh, the changes happened for the students who had lower interest or lesser interest as a diversity. They were instead of going in the ballots or raffles or those selection computerized selection process through ballots or whatever, those students who came from the specific background like indigenous or black community, they were auto selected as long as they show interest and their grades at the back end was average enough. Okay, so I just want to fill in for you.
Thank you.
Through you, Chair, just to indicate that that is for the Regional Learning Choices Program. The AP program has a different selection process. So just to make the clarification between the two.
Yeah, you're right, actually. I was talking about AP because in my case was also AP 2 years ago. So yeah, you're right about it.
I'm just gonna follow up on that. I know that, yes, there's selection process, but the thing that how would I put it? When do we introduce it? Not when they're ready for it. We have to because I'm telling you, a lot of indigenous people, a lot of Black do not know about the program. And when the kids hear about the program, they're now frightened because it's a high demand program. You can't just give it to a child at the grade that they're at. You have to introduce it from early and prepare them to be able to reach that stage. You can't just give it to them at the end of the stage and say, oh, your grade is not high, I can't choose you. You have to prepare them for it. And that's where the issue lies within that demographic of student. They knew about it at the last minute. No, I'm scared because my grade is not there. It's too pressuring versus preparing from an earlier age to be at that level.
And through you, and thank you for the question. And that is why, again, we have that as part of our multi-year strategic plan in terms of having a better focus on pathways, which also includes communication to make sure that students are better informed, families are better informed, so that the decisions can be made well in advance. And so, for example, like the session that happened last night at that middle school that I shared, and again, those programs are discussed and families are well aware, and they don't necessarily have to wait till grade 8 in this situation. It's for middle school. So anybody was open to coming in the middle school, so they have lots of awareness. They don't have to wait until grade 8 to come to any of these open houses to get information. But we know that that's an area that we want to improve on. And so thank you so much for your suggestions, and we will continue to work on that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stacey, and thank you, Dr. Logan, for your great input. Is there any other question? Is there a mover and a seconder that they received the information from Dr. Logan?
I move.
All in favor, carried. Our next agenda item for tonight is communication. Is there any communication item to share at this time? Yes, can I have your advice if I can share the event information at the Cultural Park Secondary School about the parent engagement conference in the communication?
I'm sorry, Chair, I'm unaware of that communication. The details.
It's about the parent engagement conference that is happening in Cultural Park Secondary School on Saturday, October 19th.
Yes, please go ahead.
So there is a community parent engagement conference that is happening at Kothra Park Council. It is happening on Saturday, October 19th from 8:30 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. This is the third time they are arranging this conference, and it's very informative event. They have great speakers and organizations to learn from, and it's also a chance. It provides a great chance to talk to and network with other parents. This year they have a speaker who will talk about the relational psychotherapist, and she will be talking to the all the attendees about understanding and managing screen time. And you can register yourself. The information has been shared already with the PIC members. They can find in their email regarding that. Thank you. Next agenda item for tonight is committee members' motion for consideration. Is there any motion for consideration?
Sorry, Madam Co-Chair, are we skipping the point agenda 9?
That was the communication that I just covered.
Okay. Because I was hoping to suggest for notice of motion for the next meeting. So I guess
It's here in for the notice of motion. It's suggested for the notice of motion
for the next meeting.
for the next meeting. Jasmine?
I mean,
Through the chair, so just to clarify, item 9, there are no motions on the agenda tonight. For item 10, if we're at that item on the agenda through the chair, would be an opportunity for a notice of motion for placement on the next agenda.
Okay. Madam Co-Chair, may I?
So when we go to agenda item 10,
Sure.
then you can
Okay.
share your notice of motion. So there are no motion for consideration at this time. Our next agenda item is committee members' notices of motion. So are there any notices of motion at this time?
Yeah, if Madam Co-Chair, if you may allow for the next agenda item, I would like to just request Dr. Logan or anyone from the board just to get some additional details on the multi-year strategic planning and the student achievement planning or goals for the students fall under special need, plus student falls under with learning disability or learning delays kind of thing. Just want to understand the policy, vision, program, planning, whatever is around those specific students. I would like to know more about it, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Adnan. So we received your notice of motion. We need a mover and a seconder. That Jasmine, you want?
Sorry, I think if I can just understand some more, the request is for staff to provide some further information on the strategic plan with regard to special education.
So multi-year strategic planning and goals with student achievement planning falls for students fall under special need and students who have learning disability.
Okay, and through the chair, I think staff's heard that request for information. I'm not sure if there's a need for a formal motion, if staff is here for that request.
And through you, Chair, can I just get clarification on specifically around your request? Is it around, if it's around the multi-year strategic plan and the types of things that occur in schools around special education, that is often articulated and shared during our SEAC meetings. And the SEAC meetings happen once a month. And I'm happy to share the time where the SEAC meetings occur. And that's where they go into quite a lot of detail around exactly what you are asking about. We could, because I'm also thinking about what is the mandate of PIC. If the committee is interested in student achievement as the first goal, and we talk a little bit about the types of things that families could do to support their child and student with the student achievement goal, then we could also make sure that we speak to what does that look like around supporting students that have a learning disability or another area of special education need, so we can incorporate it that way. Would that be helpful?
Of course, that's definitely.
Okay, but your specific question sits better with the SIAC committee, and so, but I think I can answer some of your questions through that angle of the goal. Does that work?
I would like to dive in at both parts.
Okay, perfect, great,
Thank you, Dr. Logan. I just want to add to your suggestion that what we have suggested during the PIC MYSP discussion, that during each public meeting, we will address one of the key areas, and that could be one of the areas that we can discuss during the public meeting. Thank you. Thank you, Jasmine, for is there any other notices of motion at this time? Do we have mover and seconder? And a seconder? Thank you. The next agenda item for tonight is adjournment. Is there a mover and seconder for the motion of adjournment? Thank you. And a seconder? All in favor?